Welcome to GovCon Clarity with Dr. Lori Smith, where strategies replace guesswork and readiness replace wishful thinking. With over 4 decades inside government systems, Dr. Lori breaks down what agencies actually evaluate: capacity, compliance, and credibility. If you're ready to compete at the federal level, not just apply, this is where clarity begins.
As I often say, readiness protect what ambitious pursues. And in this series, Systems Before Scaling, we're building the structure that carries you there. So in series 1, we built your first governance framework: decision authority maps, core policies, documentation systems, review rhythms. And so if you did the work, you got the bones of something real. But here's what I've learned about governance in small businesses. Building it is one thing. Making it live and breathe in your day-to-day operations is another thing entirely. So today we're going to talk about how to make governance a living practice, not a shelf document. And we're going to talk about the part nobody covers: how to introduce governance to your team, your subcontractors, and your collaborators without it feeling stiff, corporate, or like you suddenly became a different person, right? So welcome to GovCon Clarity with Dr. Lori Smith. I am the CEO and founder of Archaeologist LLC and the founder of Sonar Seeds Empowerment. This is our Making Governance a Living Practice episode in our Systems Before Scale series. And this is where governance moves from, theory to practice. Quick thread back to where, we've been. So in series 1, episode 4, we built that governance framework there. It was 4 layers, starting with your decision authority map and ending with your monthly review rhythm. In episode 7, we introduced the concepts of rhythms, roles, and rules in the operating system. And so today what we're doing is connecting those 2 ideas and operationalizing governance. Because governance that sits in a document isn't governance, it's an aspiration. And governance that shows up in how you actually run your business, that's readiness. So let me start with the most common thing I hear from founders who've done the governance work. I built it, but I'm the only one who knows about it. Or I wrote the policy, but I don't know how to bring my team into it without it feeling weird. This is real, especially for women and veteran founders who built these collaborative relationship-based cultures, in our businesses. The idea of suddenly showing up with an authority matrix and a set of policies can feel, off, like we're changing the vibe. And so here's what I want you to understand. Governance doesn't change your culture, it protects it. When decisions are clear, people have less anxiety. When authority is defined, people don't have to guess. And when there's a process for handling problems, people feel safer. So governance isn't the opposite of warmth. It's the infrastructure that allows warmth to survive under any kind of pressure. So how do you introduce it? Let me give you language you can actually use with a team member or subcontractor. It sounds like this. Okay, I've been working on getting our business, more organized so that things don't all have to run through me. I want to share some of what I built so we can both have more clarity about how decisions get made. And so you have more room to move without waiting on me for everything. Notice what that does. It sort of frames governance as a gift rather than a mandate, right? It positions delegation as the goal, not control. And it invites collaboration rather than imposing compliance. So with a client or a contracting officer, though, it's going to sound different. We formalize our internal governance, including our decision authority structure, our quality control process, and our documentation standards. I'd be happy to walk you through our approach if that would be helpful. That's a professional version. And that versions build confidence because it tells the agency this business takes itself seriously. Now, let me talk about the part that trips people up most, actually using the governance framework in real time. So here are 3 moments where your governance should activate and what that looks like in practice. Moment 1, you have a new opportunity come in. Before you say yes, before you start pricing, before you promise anything, your governance should kick in. You're going to check the decision authority map. Is this within your approval threshold? Does it need an escalation? Pull up your bid, no bid worksheet from series 1. Run it through the 5 questions. Document the decision. This takes about 15 minutes, and those 15 minutes can save you months of regret. Moment 2, a deliverable is about to just go out the door. Before it ships, your quality control policy activates. Who reviews it? Against what standard? Is there a checklist? Was the review documented? I know it feels faster to just send it, but just send it is how quality problems start. And in federal work, quality problems become performance problems, and performance problems become CPAR's problem. Moment 3, something goes wrong. You got a deadline slips. A subcontractor underperforms. A client changes scope without documentation. This is where escalation paths earn their keep. Who get notified? At what threshold? What's the documented response? Without governance, these moments become panic. But with governance, they become a process. And process is what builds trust, both internally and with the agencies evaluating you. Governance doesn't change your culture, it protects it. Now, I want to bring in a perspective that I think will be really valuable here. In this next segment, I'm going to be joined by a guest whose work I deeply respect, someone who has built procurement readiness infrastructures in growing small businesses for more than 2 decades. I am thrilled to bring in a woman whose work I respect deeply, Ms. Shenell Glover. She's the CEO and founder of Ambitious Strategists. Shenell is a government contracting strategist based in Los Angeles who has spent over 2 decades helping small businesses, move from being, contract curious to contract ready. Her path is unique because she started her career inside of the Small Business Administration as a financial analyst and grants manager. And there she earned the SBA Superior Performance Award. And then she went on to lead federal business development and capture at Snorkel AI. She's also worked at the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce. And that's where I had the privilege of supporting her in one of her initiatives, supporting and helping small businesses, again, get contract ready, right? And she is a certified high-speed project manager. She's certified in high-speed project management. In 2018, she founded Ambitious Strategists to fill a gap she saw in the field, build the procurement readiness infrastructure small businesses need before they chase the contract. Shenell and I have known each other for a few years now, going back to a panel we did together on demystifying government contracting. So if you're serious about building the systems behind your pursuit, listen closely as I welcome Shenell to GovCon Clarity. Welcome, Shenell.
Hello, Lori. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I respect your work as well, and I'm happy to be here, excited to be on your new venture and to share our knowledge with other people. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I do respect your work and the things that you're also doing and have done for decades for small businesses and businesses in procurement. So let's get started.
All right now. So y'all heard her. She said, let's get started. So Shenell, okay. This is the first question. I got a series of questions and we're trying to get through all of them. But if not, we just gonna flow, right?
Okay.
But you've told small businesses that the strongest businesses aren't the ones chasing funding. They are the ones prepared to deliver and manage it. What
Yes.
does preparation actually look like at the operating system level, not just the capture level?
To be ready is to have not only capability, because I see a lot of companies that have the capability to do the work, but do you have the capacity? Are you actually ready? So to be ready is to have uh your to have systems, like basic systems in place, and systems that meet the requirements of the type of customer you're going after. Do you have the fiscal capacity to do the work? Can you sustain, if you're paid late, or if you have to have startup, if you have startup costs that
Mhm.
aren't covered, or you have, for example, you may have a individual on your team that costs more than, what your customer is willing to pay. You have to consider all those things. And when you're ready, you can do those, you can do those things, because if you built out systems and processes, and you have backing, you have some type of foundation where that will not make or break, your business once you get in front of a customer. So being ready, to me, and work on the businesses that I work with, one thing I have them to do is to do a readiness assessment, and we cover fiscal, administrative, legal, subcontracting. Like, are you really ready to go in front of a customer? You don't have to have every single thing, you know, uh, ready as soon as you start your business. But when you go in front of a customer, the more you're ready for them, and like to meet all these requirements, the easier it will be for you. And based on my past experience, I see businesses that can do the work because they're capable of doing the work. Like, you meet the requirements of the RFP, but when you go into the customer space, you have to deliver. Are you ready to deliver?
Yeah. And that is so important, having that operating system on that back end to help with the ability to not only just be capable, but have that capacity to be able to perform. So great response. Okay, question 2. You worked inside SBA and alongside primes like Snorkel AI.
Mm-hmm.
When a small business walks in the door saying, I want a federal contract, what's the first governance gap you see almost every time?
Is that they don't understand the customer, and they treat the federal government or any large government like it's another small business. I recommend that they look at each department as its own entity almost, because they have their own programs, their own regulations, policies, just things that they do. And you're going to have a learning curve if you treat the federal government as like one big business. Like, I'm going to target the federal government, or I'm going to target SBA or HHS. Like, which department, which program, what requirements do you need to meet to be there? And even if you've had another customer in the past that's similar to that agency, even if it was another government agency, especially at the state or local level, um, or something that's totally different from their mission, you still may have a learning curve. And I think that's something that's common, that and companies are sometimes shocked by, like, how much there's a vast difference in each customer within the federal government space, or like any large government.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and it sort of leads into my third question, because throughout our dealings and our interactions, and been on various platforms and various conferences, and even in your work and your capacity, you use the phrase procurement readiness. And so, how is that different from the general business readiness? And I think that was sort of what you was alluding to just recently. Most founders think that they are building.
Because you're ready to do business, you can do business with me or Lori, or pretty much anyone. But when you're doing business with a larger, more structured and regulated entity, that's a different ball game. And to me, that's where businesses will say, for example, uh, we've done this process in 100 spaces in the private sector. And I've even had large companies that had that issue when they transferred over to like government contracting. Their regulations and the policies and even the cybersecurity or security requirements are different. Administrative is it can become an administrative burden to meet all the requirements, and I think people may not consider that if if you've never done it before. And that's something that I see that's common, is that there are a lot more requirements outside of the actual requirement, the work you're doing. So do you understand how to do your financial reporting?
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with indirect cost? Are you familiar with the security clearance requirements and how everyone that's on your private sector projects may not be able to convert over if they can't clear? You
Mm-hmm.
know, what are the agency specific regulations that they sometimes prefer to have people who are familiar with, so they don't have to have their learning curve?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. Companies may not consider it, and then I don't expect them to if they're new to the space. But those are things that I would say a lot of companies may struggle with, that I've seen in the past. And even companies that are familiar with one customer, one federal customer or state customer, and they transfer over to another department or agency, and it's like a fresh start, a different world. We get customers that need help with transitioning or learning their new customers. So that's why I also say when you're getting procurement ready, learn your customer.
Mm-hmm. And I love that because it actually segues so nice into this operating system framework that we actually talk about here on the show. Talk that I call rhythms, roles, and rules. And you sort of actually you adequately touched on several activities or actions that fit into each and or either of those. So, in your experience, which of those three breaks down first as a small business grows? So we got rhythms, that's the frequency. What am I doing consistently? Roles, who's doing what and when they're doing it. And then the rules from a compliance perspective, what is required, whether it's in accordance with this customer, those types of things as well. So and from your experience, when you're dealing and you're working with small businesses, which of those areas break down first as the small business grow?
Risk management. Not the thing for small businesses. Sometimes they don't realize the risk that they have. Like they don't know their tolerance because they don't know the risks that are in the space. They don't know how to remediate them because, again, if you don't know all the requirements, and we get example of not knowing the requirements, like having risk management, because if you don't have proper compliance, it doesn't matter if you're, across the board, administrative, fiscal, meeting the regulatory requirements. If you can do the work and you're not meeting those requirements, you're still going to put your contract, or your portfolio at risk of either like a suspension or some type of, trouble that you don't want to deal with. So I would say, understand, that's the thing, learn the customer, know what applies to this customer, know what applies to your certifications. And an example is recently they've had like certification reviews. Some people are going to find out through the review that there are all these other requirements attached to their certification that they're not familiar with. They'll say, oh, I met the SBA or like HHS's grant management requirements, but maybe not the OMB or like some far, requirement that they're just not familiar with because they got an agreement, they signed it, it was a contract, it was full of all these different things. And also I say, for example, it may be a link within a contract that has lots of pages behind it or clauses that something that's very important, and you're not going to find out until there's a review or something goes wrong. You don't even know that you're at risk. So understanding, the requirements of what you're doing, not just signing a contract and saying like, okay, let's do the work. There are requirements there.
So if we do not make sure that we understand the rules that are applicable to that interaction as we begin to grow, that breaks down because we're not postured for that. We are not, we haven't instituted or documented rules of engagement. We haven't understood the magnitude of it. So as I grow, man, I run into a wall because, hey, there are some labor laws applicable to a certain requirement. And at this dollar value, no, it's not triggered, but at a greater dollar value, they are triggered. But man, I didn't understand that because I was just operating the same old way. I'm not even scaling as I even pursue larger efforts based on dollar values to even know what triggers a change. So that was actually great response. And so I appreciate that.
Thank you. And Lori, I'm glad you touched on like the requirements as they grow. An example is like a common one that people struggle with sometimes, especially in certain industries, is the Davis-Bacon Act.
Mm-hmm.
They may not know it because you don't know that something applied. When Lori said like your business is growing, you have labor requirements, you still have to meet those. Your employees may know about it, and sometimes the employee will share, with the regulators or your contracts office if you're unaware. So you want to make sure know all these things that especially that apply to your money, your employees, the administration of the contract. But then second, I would say is the fiscal piece, because once you run into compliance issues, it can cost you, or when you're growing, you're going to have the financial backing to be able to sustain and invest in your business.
Yeah. Okay. Great response. Okay. Question number 5. Okay. You've seen founders try to delegate too early and delegate too late. What's the signal that tells you a founder is actually ready to hand off decision authority and not just task?
I would say I see founders hand off too early mostly in the government contracting space, because they are trying to run their private, corporate side too. One thing we have to remember is that your portfolio, your relationships matter. Your portfolio can be impacted by the relationships that you or your key team members have within your company. And when you hand off things too soon and you're not aware of what's going on at the client site, or you're not engaging with the client or knowing like what other issues are within the client space, one that can reduce the communication between you and the customer, then your customer may start to depend too much on your staff. You're the owner. You're not in a loop too soon. You're exiting, and then you have pretty much staff there that the customer knows, and they don't know, who the small business owner is, or who the C-level staff is. And in my opinion, like you should want to be more involved. And I know from experience that some of the most successful companies that I've seen grow, their owners are, if they're not, I'm not saying that you have to be on site and, run your business day to day as an employee, but those owners are very involved. When I see them in government contracts and they're growing their companies, they're very involved, and they also interact and make sure that they keep consistent communication with their government clients or potential customers.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So, okay, so we got quite a few people that are listening in. So for a founder that's listening who's pre-award, they're pre-award, they have no past performance yet, no prime relationships yet. What's the single most credible signal they can build this quarter that tells agencies they're ready?
That they're ready?
Yeah, they don't have no past performance or no prime relationship just yet. So what's that single thing that they can do that signals to the agencies that they can build this quarter that will signal to the agencies that they are ready or that they're real?
I would suggest asking for an intro if no active bids are out, and starting to learn the agency before you go in front of them. But I would ask for an introduction and get out. Go to the events that they're having, because right now agencies should be, having a forecast and just certain types of events, industry events. Get out there, but be informed when you go in front of a customer. So if you're just trying to get into the space, I would say ask for the intro. But before you do that, do your research and have an informed conversation about things they care about. What are their priorities? What are their shortfalls? Is there something that a requirement that you think that you may be able to meet for them that they haven't been able to? And then how would you do that? Because also, if you do get the opportunity, can you actually deliver? So you want to make sure you have all that covered. Who, and when you're asking for an intro, make sure you're going to the right person, identifying who are the key stakeholders. And most of the time, some businesses can sometimes get that wrong. Just because someone is the chief or head of a department, it does not mean that that's the person that you need to talk to. So you need to identify the right people, ask for an introduction, or get out to where they are, and make sure you're having an informed conversation and you did your research. If you're not at that point, maybe you can look into subcontracting opportunities, like who's already there. Is there a need that you can meet? Do they have smaller dollar value opportunities that may be available to you? Do your research, do your market research, and then you know go to the customer. But make sure also they don't have any active bids out for things, because that's another thing that comes up often, is that a customer may not respond. Sometimes they cannot respond to you, some of the questions you're asking at a certain time. So you learn about timing. When do they get their funding? Do they even have funding for what you're looking to do? Are they interested in it? They're only going to buy what they want and need. And who you need to talk to. Is this the right person? Can they refer you to someone else? And remember, this is relationship building. So you don't want to be too forceful. You want to build relationships. You're trying to build an alliance with a partnership with a customer.
And I really do love that response, because I think it's very important that we are more strategic in the development of our outreach and engagement and establishment of relationships with prime contractors as well as agencies. Because far too often, we're just running out there and we're not being purposeful. But to know who doorbell you should be ringing, know who am I talking with, getting to know them, because that's how you establish and that's how they learn. Hey, okay, you're a real person, you're a real company. And guess what? By doing that, what I can say from experience, when businesses come in and engage us, what we are able to then do is, if we hear of an opportunity that that is coming out, we can refer, we can recommend, or we can say, hey, go connect with this organization here. They're doing the same thing that you're doing. And from a strategic perspective, you may have a social economic certification that fits within their subcontracting goals and plans and desires and aspirations. So it is spot on. That is how you can get an agency can realize that, hey, you're a real person. I'm a real organization, by going in now when appropriate and having discussions and meeting them, and not only talking about yourself, but learning what their needs are, what their pain points are, and how you can best serve them. And I also like the fact that you reemphasize, hey, don't just show up to an office that offering what you have if it's not something they buy. Because far too often people hear just, I'm gonna go talk to the government, and you try to compel them to buy what you offer because somebody done said, oh, the government buys everything. They do, potentially. Everything is a bit definitive, but the government agency or office you're in may not be the one that has that mission. So they may not be purchasing what you offer, but go do your due diligence and find out which agency is. So great response. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, I got two more questions for you, and we're going to wrap up on the questions. Okay, so you sat on both sides of the table. You've been inside the SBA grant making seat and outside as a capture strategist. What do founders consistently get wrong about how agencies actually evaluate them?
Okay. Also, one other position that I've held was COTAR. So so I've also been able to be like the contractor's office technical rep over some tech projects, and then programs to helping them bring them back into compliance. So I would say The key thing, one of the key things is that the small business or founder, they have to realize you're there to do the government service. They're not there to hold your hand to tell you what to do. Each way, they do have lots of requirements, but you're there to perform a service for them. So you want to go in. This is why I say learn the customer, learn their processes, learn whatever policies or regulations, because you do not want to go there and have to learn on the job the entire way. Like, think about it. You're a business. Would you, if you hire someone to come and do your financials or do something for you, set up some, let's say, an event, would you want to hold their hand along the way and have to tell them to do everything and then they charge you? So I would say to be more prepared and understand what your customer is asking you to do. And even if you know a different way of doing it, or you think that it's a better way, if you recommend it to a customer, this is something I see consistently as well when people come into the federal space, or even just large governments or highly regulated places. If they already have a way they're doing something and we know that it can be improved, if you recommend it and they are like hard on just keeping it that way, you're there to do a service. Do what they ask you to do, document it, document your recommendation, just document everything. That's the key. That's what it comes down to. Document everything and learn who you're working for and what you're supposed to deliver for them. And I know that sounds simple.
No, it ain't simple, because a lot of times I think what people forget, or again, we have these ghostwriters writing these proposals for folks, and now, with the help of AI, I don't know how many people are reading what it generates, but it is very important for people to realize and know that, hey, I'm evaluating you based on the standards and based on what you presented as your capability and capacity to do. When you win this award, we expect you to be as great as you put on that paper, or even greater. And sometimes folks show up unprepared and just don't understand. No, they expect you to be everything you said you were. What? It's like you got this award.
I'm glad you said that, Lori, because I have been on contracts where I walked in the door working right away, and not just, you're there to work, but I walked in the door and had to do like resolve complex issues, go to executive meetings the next day and get briefed the day before. And that doesn't happen each time, but I'm always prepared for that.
Yeah.
So when you walk into your customer space, you want to be prepared to do whatever you put on that paper and that proposal. And like Lori just said, they will go and pull the proposal, if you're not meeting the requirements as they should, because you should be able to deliver on whatever you put there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so I'm going to wrap this up. This is the last question. And it's one that, I ask all guests. When you hear the phrase readiness protects what ambition pursues, what does that mean in your own business? Readiness protects what ambition pursues. What does that mean in your own business, ambitious strategies right now?
That means the more prepared I am for something, then I'll be able to accomplish anything. I take my time. Sometimes someone a competitor, they may beat me to a customer, but I know that if I go to the customer ready, can execute, over deliver, I can do all the things that I aspire to do. So I have to be ready. If I'm rushing, as Lori says, rush to failure. If I'm rushing, I may not be able to excel at the things that I'm trying to do. So I'm always making sure I'm ready when I go into any space. If I'm not ready to do it, then I'd rather like not take it, because I like to master things that I do. And not coming from a place of perfection, but being able to give people customers what they ask for. So if I cannot deliver on that, then why am I doing this? I want to be able to meet the requirements of whatever I strive to do. So the more I'm going to stay ready. If I'm not ready, we're going to hold off. And Lori know that working with me, we make sure that we're ready to meet the requirement, and we want to over deliver. So that's what I strive to do.
And you know what? And I appreciate that. And I love that. I also love that you threw that one zinger in there. You know, man, we're not striving for perfection, because far too often, even in all the accomplishments that we've achieved separately and collectively, even as business owners and formal government federal service workers, you know, we have there's a aspect of profession that you want, or excellence that you want to always be operating in. But everything is not going to always be pretty. You know, launching this podcast, I couldn't wait no more for it to be pretty and glossy. You know, going live, you know, nope, can't be pretty and glossy no more, Lori. Shenell and Shawana and others just wasn't having it with me no more. So they threw me out here. So I'm out here, not perfect, but even in my imperfection, it doesn't mean that the information that we're providing and that we're bringing to small businesses aren't prudent, and it's designed to help you. So Shenell, thank you for joining us on today. And do you have any last parting words, you know, that you would like to share, you know, during this time, during this season, with so much going on? Do you have any other parting words that you would like to share to give small businesses that may be listening in, whether they're women, veterans, or other underrepresented groups, a ray of hope in this season?
Yes, I would say it's a journey. Don't compare yourself to other people here. Like, it is a journey. It's your journey. This is your business journey. You're going to get the customers that you're supposed to have. You're only going to be in places where you're supposed to be. Find your customer. You may get 100 no's before you get to that customer. You may get an immediate contract, but don't compare your journey to someone else's. Like, this is your business journey. You're going to do all the things that you want to do there if you just focus on delivering for your customer and doing it your way. This is your path. So I just have to say that, because I see and I hear customers tell me, and then just like in industry, I get to meet a lot of businesses like, this company has this, or they have access to that. This is access to that, or they won a contract yesterday. They just started. That's their path. You have your own. So like, just keep going. That's the key thing for me. And I always share that with, as a motto I have, like, just keep going. As long as you keep going, you'll get there.
All right. Well, we do appreciate your time, and you and I, we will catch up and connect soon. But thank you so much for joining us on today.
Yes, thank you, Lori, and team. Thank you for everything you all are doing in the background.
All right. Well, Shenell, again, thank you. And what I hope you heard in this conversation is through life-changing operations, is that these are the things that we're doing to build this show on. And so listen back to what Shenell just said, and make and map it out onto your own, your own framework. So just stay connected. Her observations, founders delegating tasks, not decision authority, is the hardest part of growing beyond yourself. And her answer on what agencies are actually evaluating, that's rules. The decision boundaries that tell the world how your business operates when you are not in the room. Rhythms, roles, and rules. Shenell didn't use those exact words, but she was describing the same operating system when she talked about understanding the various financial systems and having those things in place. And that's not a coincidence. That's what readiness sounds like from every angle. And what I love about that conversation is it reinforces something I keep coming back to. Governance isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. You don't need a flawless system. You need a consistent one. And consistency practiced over time is what separates businesses that can hold federal work from businesses that buckle under it. So here's your practical application from this episode. I want you to do 3 things this week. 1, I want you to share your decision authority map with at least one person in your business, if you haven't already done this, or your ecosystem, a team member, a subcontractor, a business partner, using the language we discussed. 2, I want you to identify one decision that happened this week that should have gone through your governance process but didn't. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just notice it. Awareness builds the habit. And then 3, I want you to schedule your next monthly governance review if you haven't already. Put it on your calendar, protect it. Because if you're finding that governance is harder to implement than it was to design, that's normal. That's where support matters. And AccuIntelligence Advisory Service includes governance implementation, not just the framework, but the coaching to actually integrate it into your operations. And so the link to schedule a clarity assessment is in the show notes. So in our next episode, we're going to be stepping back to look at the big picture. So I'm going to walk you through how to design a readiness pathway for your business, a 12 to 18 month plan that tells you exactly which lane to prioritize and when. And it's the strategic planning episode, and it's designed to take everything we built in series 1 and series 2 thus far and organize it into a pathway that actually makes sense for where you are today. So again, this is GovCon Clarity. Readiness protects what ambitious pursues. So build what holds the opportunity and what holds you. Bye-bye.